We've done quite a bit of work with co-ops. We kind of got our start working in that part of the market because they actually do have quite a bit of flexibility because they are vertically integrated and also because they have a very unambiguous charter within their community. They're nonprofits. A lot of what they do is really directly tied to service to their member owners, and they have both the tools and the obligation to keep rates low within that. So the things that they don't have, they are typically really resource strapped. They're usually small organizations. They don't have a lot of time, and usually, functions that would have a 50-person team in a large utility might have like a fraction of a person's time in a co-op. So it's hard for them to take on challenges that are really resource intensive. On the other hand, we loved working and continue to work with folks in the co-op sector because if you can actually go in and more, help them out with the heavy lift of moving data around and getting it assembled and stitching over gaps and all of those kinds of things, they have all the same data sources and many of the same challenges that larger utilities do, and they can sometimes move a lot more quickly. So part of the thing that was great about us starting our work with co-ops is that we developed really robust capabilities for doing things like stitching together data sets. And we actually use a lot of like kind of small A AI to fill in gaps within data and all of those kinds of things. That's helped us out a lot as we've moved on to it and had begun working with larger utilities as well. The thing that's really, I think, difficult for co-ops is that they can end up with the short end of the stick, situations where there's a lot of risk or a lot of money moving around. And particularly like Winter Storm Uri put some of the Texas co-ops into situations where they basically went bankrupt because they they had contract structures in place that kind of obligated them to pay for power that maybe wasn't even necessarily available to provide service. And it's a very complex situation, but they are not necessarily in a really fantastic position to benefit from the efficiencies of scale of things like the ERCOT market, but are sometimes in a situation where they end up, bearing some of the costs. And we saw those impacts from Uri radiate, up into Colorado and over into Arizona with gas shortages and price spikes and, kind of all of the above. So I think like they've got their own challenges, but what is fantastic about co-ops is that they're very responsive to customer needs. And so, that can show up in innovation and affordability. That can also show up in innovation and thinking about like how to bring on a large load which could help offset like costs for everybody else on the system, maybe help that large load get connected more quickly. So I think like we're still going to continue to see a lot of innovation, perhaps disproportionately on the co-op side. Also, there's a lot of them and they can try different things. But I also think they're managing some really significant increasing challenges around like system costs as well that have to be balanced there.